went straight into LEAP and had to learn a lot of complex formatting and jaw stacking, and also, or AP in the brain, or some of my courses, and there was a lot of, you know, and people had troubles with, you know, some people had trouble learning or taking all those new concepts at once. So I designed this course just as an introductory course, just using Touch for Health to correct it. So, you know, it's nothing complicated, but so you could see the difference between, you know, what a difference a format can make. And so what I do is for both the cortex and limbic brain, you use supraspinatus. And so you correct it so it's nice and strong, and then you can put the format on, you know, put it in pause lock, and then retest it and see exactly what information it gives you. Because when you test one supraspinatus, say for cortex, when you test it on the right-hand side, you're testing the left side of the brain. And the same over here, when I test my left arm, I'm testing the right side of the brain, and then together you can do both or integrate them. And same with the limbic system. Now, was there a picture before or after that? Oh, okay. So this is a picture of the limbic format from AP in the brain, and I've just drawn out all the modes, anatomy and gland mode, and CV24 and CV23, and so according to our we have a Brussels convention in kinesiology actually, and that is the times sign means that they're put on together simultaneously. And that came from the group in Brussels, so we call it the Brussels Convention. And if you put a plus, it means you have to stack. Okay? So this limbic format means they all go on at the same time. So basically, anatomy, a gland, 23, 24, you stack it. And so why would you use that? Well, go back. Go back, can you go back another one? Okay, so this is a picture of the limbic brain taken out of the brain. You can see there you've got the amygdala down there and hippocampus and other regions here in the septum, and all around here you have the limbic cortex. Now, why would you use it? Well, Charles was just telling us why you would use it, because the limbic brain is to do, I mean, if you want a word to describe it, just one word, you would say it's the emotional brain. You know, and it's where you're going from your cortex, which is like your thinking brain, through the limbic brain down to the reptilian brain in the brainstem. So, you know, in brain formatting, I don't want to get into complicated, you know, analysis of the limbic system. There's other courses to do that in, and it's more here. You know, what you want to know is when you're working with the limbic brain is that you're going to work with emotions or memory as well. And then I'll just leave it at that. Okay, now again, when you know, the difference is that you can either put on cortex, which is your thinking brain, or limbic, which is your emotional memory brain. And again, you can do it, test one muscle, test the other, or test them together. And this, you can see here, when you test them together, that you do the commissural pathways, which means the pathways that go left to right. And for instance, you can see up here you've got the hippocampal commissure, which connects the two hippocampi together. And there's also an anterior commissure, which is not really, you can't really see it on that figure, but that does connect the two amygdala together and other parts of the hypothalamus and the parts of the limbic cortex as well. So you get those left-right pathways in the limbic system as well. Okay, so that's the brain formatting. So now what I want to do is talk about consciousness and how later on you can use formatting to access these states. And I've been very fortunate in my research with this, as I've had someone to work on, to try it all out on, who actually has had the experiences of all these states of consciousness, and he's written quite a few books. His name is Stephen Walensky, and he's got a lot of theories about consciousness, and he's written something like 14 books. He's got a DVD out now, and so his work is easily accessible. And Steve's a friend of mine, and you know, when I'm flying through the States, often I'll stop there for a few days and try out my latest thing on him. And because he can actually go into the state and tell me exactly where it's resonating at, which is fortunate to have someone like that to try it on. Okay, and so this diagram shows you here we've got like a physical consciousness in the physical plane, then we start awakening to an awakened consciousness until you get to like an enlightened consciousness, or what Steve would call the void. You go to the next one. Okay, so to understand this, now this is a model I've put together using different models, but relating it to, I've got Stephen Walensky's model, also I guess the theosophical model, and also a model from physics. Now, up the top here, we've got, like, in theosophy they call it the divine. In Steve would call it the void of undifferentiated consciousness or nothingness. Now, it's from this, or he would often say one substance as well, but it's from this comes everything else. Now, I was reading a book by Isaac Asimov called Atom, where he describes all the different the discoveries of all the different subatomic particles and superstring theory and all about bosons and gluons and all this type of thing. And so what was interesting is he's talking about the Big Bang. And in the book he says, well, you know, what happened before the Big Bang? And he says in it, before the Big Bang was the vacuum. And when I read that, I said, well, that's the void, isn't it? You know, there's nothingness or one substance. And from this, and then in that book he says, well, first you had the vacuum, then the vacuum became an imperfect vacuum, and then you had a contraction of energy to the cosmic egg. And it's interesting they use the word cosmic egg because in the Hindu creation mythology they use exactly the same word. They call it the cosmic egg that everything came from. And so then you got this cosmic egg, which was this massive contraction of energy, and then the Big Bang, and energy was formed into matter, E equals mc squared, and then you had, you know, the creation of all the matter that's in the universe. So this then differentiates down, so you get like from this one cosmic egg, you get like the formation of the cosmic principles of Yin and Yang. And we all know Yin and Yang because we work with that here in, you know, in kinesiology. And so I thought, well, I'd like to, and I started thinking about it and reading a bit, well, what would they call that in India? And in India, it's represented by two principles that are known as part of the Kundalini system called Ida and Pingala. Okay? And these are the cosmic principles of Yin and Yang. And what's interesting is they represent it as a, in India they represent Kundalini as two snakes. Okay, and Yin and Yang, I've got this nice picture we're going to see in a minute of Yin and Yang with two dragons. Now the dragon is the same as the snake. It's the same. It's the same symbol. It's just in the Chinese area they used a dragon rather than a snake, and it's interesting why. But anyway, so you get this formation of the cosmic principles of Yin and Yang, and This is what in theosophy they call the monadic plane. Steve calls it strings, or well, you get the superstrings, which in string theory, there's all the subatomic particles, like, you know, you've got your leptons and quarks are the two types of subatomic particles that are known. And so what they're saying is that they're just the strings vibrating in a different way. They're like, they have these little strings, and I've seen pictures how they think they are, and they just vibrate differently. So what we're talking about here is that the strings, this is actually the level of vibration. And so when you're working with vibration, real vibration, and not something that people call vibration, and it's not really. And so up here you would have E equals mc squared as well, because that is matter. Okay? So the next differentiation you get down here on the atomic plane. So this is what in theosophy they call the atomic plane. Steve calls it the physics dimension, and in physics it's force. Because after mass you get force, and in between particles you have forces. In atoms you have quantum forces that hold them together, and they have four known forces in physics. You have like the electromagnetic force, and each one of these forces has a so-called carrier particle. For the electromagnetic force it's the photon. And then you have the quantum forces, which is the strong force and the weak force, which are involved with keeping the atoms together. And that's the strong force, you have the gluons, and the weak force, it's WZ bosons. And then you have the gravitational force, which is the graviton they haven't actually measured yet. My brother's a physicist, and he was involved in one project once when they were trying to measure it, but last time I saw him, he said he doesn't think they'll ever do it, but you never know. And he works with photons. He's one of the world's experts on photons now. And it's interesting though, but looking at where photons are, because as we'll see later, this is quite important. But this is the physics dimension, so it's force. And but how do they know there's only 4 forces? I mean, we work with chi, don't we? And Kundalini certainly has another energy. So, you know, I think there's more forces. And so I wrote this thing, and I had 7 forces. I had the 4 known ones and 3 other ones. Then I found Satchiananda.